There we go.
Did you get it?
Yeah, it's going.
Let's see. Okay, I'm ready whenever you are. Just take your time. I can do it for you. Yeah, just pull the calculator or stopwatch. Well, do it on mine. Okay. You're good.
Give me a second.
You're good. But if you need to lay anything out in front of you, you can do that too.
All right. Am I good?
Yeah, you're good. Whenever.
All right. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher, and he is heralded and exalted by many philosophers and theologians as just an incredible man. He's the foundation, the father of philosophy, and he has this philosophy of friendship where he says that it is friendships of virtue that should be pursued, because those are the best sort of friendships. So an important question to ask ourselves is, what is virtue? Thomas Aquinas, one of those theologians and philosophers who exalts Aristotle, calls him the philosopher because he has so much respect for him, describes virtue as a good habit that is based on the act. So it is a habit where you do something. And this is important in friendship because friendship is something that you do. Being this friendship of virtue, Aristotle says, is where you give to the other person for their soul's sake, and you want what is good for them. And there are other types of friendships called friendships of pleasure, friendships of utility. Now, we've all had somebody who, if we're like a hammer to them, they need to hammer a nail, or if they, I don't know, need a place to spend the night because, I don't know, their house blew up. We've been that friend, that friend that's called a friendship of utility. You're useful. You're useful to this person. And we've also had this kind of friendship where we're going to go to my house, we're going to eat some Pringles, we're going to play Black Ops 3 until the wee hours of the morning, and it's super fun and everybody enjoys it. And that's what the friendship is. It's just fun and we enjoy spending time together. But we all need somebody who is like a shining light for us and can help us to see the good in ourselves and to pursue what is really good. Something that one of my friends, who we're going to meet in a second, says to me is, let's be friends. And he says that to express that he wants to spend time with me, he wants to really invest in me so that I can be the best that I can be. So we're going to meet my friends in a second. But how do we be friends? Well, it's by desiring what's good in another person. We're going to look at this 3 parts of this. 3 parts of being friends in 3 parts of being friends is you have to be good yourself. You have to desire what is good for you, and you have to know what is good. If you don't know what's good, your desires are going to be jacked up, and you're not going to be able to will the good of another person. The second thing you have to do is you have to seek the good in others, see where this person has faults, but also has great goodness in them. See their strengths, and see the ways that they're trying to overcome their weaknesses. And then the last thing is you have to seek good for others. So you see what this person wants, see what is good for them, and then you push them towards that. You pursue that good for their sake. Now, I've been very blessed here at Ball State. You know, my friendships in middle school and high school when growing up were all friendships of utility, of pleasure. I think we've all known somebody like that. I was either fun to spend time with, or I was the house with Pop-Tarts. And yeah, it was useful, it was pleasurable, it wasn't virtuous. But after, since coming here to Ball State, I've been very blessed with very many friends who really love me for my sake and who want what's best for me. And so I'm about to introduce you to a couple of my friends. So this is my roommate Daniel. He's a year older than me, and he is, you know, one of the men I respect most in the world, because he is so smart and he's so dedicated to pursuing what he knows is true and good and beautiful, and he pushes others to pursue that as well. And he's very passionate about what he knows is good, and he desires what is good for the people he interacts with and the people who he invests in. And I've been very privileged to be one of those people. The guy's not perfect. He has some really quirky things about him. He doesn't like to hang out with people if it's not really more than one-on-one, but I really thrive in those situations, and yeah, he's just a very good friend. This is the guy who says, let's be friends. His name's Luke. Totally the opposite of Daniel, in that he's very extroverted, very, like, I want to be talking to people and investing in people all the time. And he's really something of a mentor and a really good friend of mine, because in the ways that he sees the good in me, and he sees the weaknesses that I have, and he pushes me to confront and overcome those weaknesses, and he acknowledges the weaknesses in himself, and he takes responsibility for his actions. And yeah, that's something that I have sought to emulate him in doing. So my question for you is, who are your virtuous friends? Who is investing in you for your sake, not to get something out of you, not because you're fun to hang out with? Who wants what's best for you for your own sake? If you can't think of anybody, or if you just want some more people in your life, you know, I will say that I'm not perfect and I have a lot of problems, but I do really care about everybody here, and I say, let's be friends.
Yay! Good job, Jid. Okay, it ran about 7:30, just so you know. And I'm going to keep this going for the basis of time. Oh, I guess I'll cut it on there. Okay, cool. How did that feel?
It felt okay. I kind of struggled in the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of got going. I definitely need to put, so I've been reading like where we got most of the stuff I said about Aristotle is from this book.
Okay, cool.
But I've only read some of it, so I need to finish it.
Yeah.
And I think I really need to just like streamline some of the things I was talking about.
Yeah. How does it say anything about, like, I had a note in here, Does it say anything about, is like more of a background about him? Like how did he get to like this friendship of virtues? Like that's what I'm kind of intrigued on, is like how he, maybe like more, even to add more time since you are at 7:30, you could even add more about him in the beginning. I was kind of curious about like where he came from, and because I think everyone knows who he is, but they really like kind of don't. So I'm just kind of curious. I didn't know if it ever talked about anything like that in here. But that was curious to me. I didn't know that he even like came up with that stuff.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, just some like general feedback. I really liked like your command when you do your talks in general. Like every time you've had one, you're very like commanding, and you just like you're doing it and you're like confident in it, and I can like tell that, which I really like. I think you're very much yourself, which is great. You're never like, oh, I'm gonna act like I'm a dancer because I'm not a dancer. You know what I mean? So like, so you're very straightforward, which is really good when you're trying to connect with your audience. I really liked your slides and how they kind of aligned. I don't know if I can look at them again, maybe to like check them out further. But I like that you stuck. It was very simple and it very. I don't think I struggled to read it at all. I mean, the light's a little weird in here. But I don't know if I exactly struggled to read any of it. I like that you just chose like 2 colors and had your questions on there. I really like the photos of your friends. That's very helpful because then it actually gives a person or your audience a idea of who you're talking about. I don't know if it'd be helpful to describe them and then show their photo. I don't know if that would add to it at all, because then people get to like make up who they think you're talking about, and then it's like another, I don't know. But I did like how you included it, so you could mess around with that if you wanted. Sorry, these notes are everywhere. I liked your pausing at the end, but when was it? Oh yeah, just like, so like Ashley says like to have your moment, and I guess I like want to like ask you like to think about like what your moment is, because I know for mine personally I'm struggling with like, okay, I don't know where my moment is at yet, but like I think when you're talking about your friends, like, and those like funny stories about maybe like how they came into your life, I think you described like well what they do for you and how they do what they do for other people and why that's important to your topic. But I think like even if you can find like a funny story about how they came into your life, or just something where it's like, and you have those moments where it's when you're talking about it and then you kind of catch yourself and you're laughing and you're like, oh, that's funny, because like those are the best moments. Like those are the moments that you can like hang on to, and I think they're gonna come natural for you. But you can definitely find time to like don't feel like you can't pause. Like you could definitely pause when you're talking about your friends, and that would engage your audience a little bit more. What else, General? Oh, you talked a little bit about, this is just general in the beginning. You talked a little bit about how like we are as kids with our friendships to like now. And I don't know if you could like hone in on like maybe a story of like how, because you mentioned it in the towards the end, but like I don't know if you could mention it further or earlier on in your topic about like maybe. You kind of did when you were talking about like the Pringles cans and stuff like that. That was funny. I don't know if you could add more to it, but I think maybe like a connection sooner on to like how it was as a kid versus now, because you talked about how like these friendships as a kid versus now. But I don't know if you could add a story there about that, and then just like. Oh, I know that there's like a huge desk right here, but when you're asking like, I'd have to go back and look at the slides, but when you're like about to ask, after your like background of story or something, like and you're about to ask those like questions to the audience, I think it's when you first engage your audience.
These ones?
Maybe it's the how do we do that, yeah. Yeah, I think it's the how do we do that. I think you could definitely take that time to like chill for a sec and like move over. Like don't feel like you can't use this, which I know like I hate moving. Like it's like, oh my god, they're looking at me. Like they can see everything. Like they can see me walking. Like I hate that. But like I think that you definitely like without this huge thing in the way, which is you could even use this if you wanted. just for this purpose. You definitely, like, I think that that would be a good moment, because it kind of gets off of the basics and the background, and it gets into you and why this is important. I think, like, honing in on why it's important is really gonna make your talk good, and like why we should want these people in our lives.
Okay, so like I can describe like this. I can use, I don't know, this slide is kind of like a bridge between like being very basic about it and then describing it.
Absolutely.
So like I can talk about like there's a friend of mine who we're gonna meet in a little bit who says, let's be friends, and he says that to really say that he wants to spend time together in a way that is meaningful and impactful for both of us and helps us to grow and be better people. So, what do we do? How do we be friends?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not many people know how to do it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I like that.
So I could go.
Because it does, it keeps, I think like when you're speaking, you can have like stages of like, so like there's like the theory about like how we always are like performing, you know that theory?
Yeah.
And it's like Ashley always talks to me about it. She's like, well, you're always performing. And I'm like, am I? And so you can honestly have like those stages of like, here's where I want to be like serious, here's where I want to be like funny-ish, here's where I want to get real, here's where it's important, like things like that kind of. I think if you break it down like that, it'll be helpful. So I had that one, and then you could, I don't know if we can like start, if we just want to like break this down, we could start from the beginning again, because I know you like were like, I don't know where I want to start. So you're fine, like take a breath, like we can run through the intro again, I think maybe, and that'll set more of the background. If you want to do that right now.
Yeah.
We can just run through that again.
So like up until this point, or?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just go through the beginning and then up until that, and we'll see how that like feels.
Okay.
And I'll like take more notes.
So the way I started, there were a lot of things going through it because I basically knew what I was going to say from this slide on, but I had this first slide where I could have gone a lot of different directions. So I started out talking about Aristotle.
Yeah.
But I was originally going to say like he's, and like, I don't know, I was going to talk about like he's really somebody to be listened to, establish credibility for him on this slide.
Okay.
But I don't know if I need to do that or if I should just, do I need to establish credibility for him? Was that good, or could I go a different route? Like, I could describe.
What's the slide after? I guess the what is virtue, that's the slide after.
I don't know if this slide should actually go after this one. Because I could talk about like the friendships of pleasure and friendships of utility and have it, and like talk about different friendships like growing up.
Yeah.
That fell into that, and then say like, oh, but there's this friendship of virtue up here. What does that mean? First,
I could see that.
What is virtue?
Yeah.
Or maybe like Aristotle's, and then go into this one, and then go this slide, and then have this one.
I could almost see where your intro slide is like more of like setting the scene kind of thing, not credibility yet, because everyone's like aware of his name.
Right.
So maybe you could like set the scene more, however that be, maybe like more about like if you found more if you found more information about like who Aristotle was, and then kind of like not saying who he was. I don't know if you even want to take off his name. It kind of could be just you setting the scene of like friendship or just friendship in general. Maybe that would be helpful. And then I think after that you can introduce, like it could be like you were talking about him, but not without saying his name. You know what I mean? Like kind of how you're talking about Luke, but you don't say his name yet. Like you kind of could like set the scene that way for like who he was. And then go to your friendship, like the different friendships.
So like talk about the guy and say like there's a philosopher who really set the foundation for just so many influential people throughout the ages, and he had this philosophy about friendship, where there's friendships. So his philosophy of friendship is like, talks about like the friendships of pleasure and utility first, and then he talks about these friendships. But he spends like, there are, I don't know, maybe 10 books or chapters in his ethics book. It's like chapter 8 or book 8 that he actually like talks about friendship. He spends before that part of the book talking about virtue, and like what virtue is, and he like talks about each of the virtues.
Yeah, I mean, it's however you feel. Like, you're the one that's like read this stuff, and you're the one that's most knowledgeable about the topic, so we aren't. So I can give you feedback though on like what, like, to help you out with it, but like ultimately it's like your talk and your thing, so I'm not going to tell you how to write it, but I can help you out with it though. I think it would be cool if you kind of like set the scene of like where he came from, kind of like how it was. Like, don't bring us, I guess, presently yet. Kind of like set the scene of how it was.
So like, should I say something like it's, I don't know,
18 whatever,
it's
etc.
500 BC.
Yeah.
And a guy walks into a room full of smart people and says, "Let's be friends."
Something like that. I mean, yeah, you could just set the scene that way. Yeah, I definitely, because then it kind of like, I think when you were giving the talk, I just was thinking like, I'm very much like a picture person, so I kept like picturing this all in my head, and like I liked what I was thinking about, like how you were talking about your friends, like how I can fit, how you saw them versus how I could see them. But yeah, I liked if you could open it up that way maybe, or just some background more into who he was, and then you can go into his philosophy on virtue and friendships, which I think would be the next three points,
So like,
maybe, and then
also I'll talk about him, who he is, and
Yeah.
like introduce him, and
Yeah,
then I'll talk about
I think the
virtue
credibility-
first and then friendship.
well, I think like this slide, the third one, like that's when you can introduce him, like kind of like set the scene, and then the next three is when you can say his credibility more, and like this is what he is, and like this is why, like it's not important yet, but kind of like, so this first slide would be setting the scene, then you would go to his credibility and what he said, what is virtue, this is it, boom, Pringles, all that, you know what I mean?
So you're saying that there needs to be a slide like between these two, and so we're setting the stage here, talking about who he is, and then we talk about what he said on this second slide, and then we talk about what is virtue.
Yeah, and I don't think
Okay.
you necessarily need to add one. If this is just an opinion, you don't have to take this advice at all. But if you wanted, you could just flip the third slide with the second slide.
Okay, so go.
If you wanted to. However, it works best. But I think like your intro could be really good if you talk more about him, I think, in a way.
Okay.
Which is like, you could even, I don't know how you write your talks, but you can bullet point it out and be like, this is what I really want to say about him, why it's important. I think like, I always write on my talks, like what is my core point and why does it matter? And I think if you really are passionate about like this, then you could like explain to your audience somehow throughout this, like this is why it's important. And I think you do, like, but don't be afraid to like do it soon. Like you could. And I like how you ask your audience questions too, like, cause like this is so relatable and it's so true. Like everyone needs like these people. Like my talk's all about relationships and how you actually need people in your life, no matter like what you think. Like you actually do need people. So, but yeah, if you just want to like take some time maybe and like, you could BS, for the lack of a word, anything that you wanted. This is definitely the way for your intro. But I think just run it through again, maybe, and I can stop you at points. But yeah, definitely think that you do well is definitely like your command. I like that you have your slides. I think you're like very prepared. You're at a good point for sure. So I think just those little moments that we can add on to will definitely help with your timing. Let me see. Yeah, and don't be afraid to like, you don't exactly need to like look at your slide in the beginning, so don't be afraid to just like look more towards your audience than your slides too.
Right.
Which it's a rough draft, so like I'm literally going to be looking at my stuff like hard when I do mine. So those are just things that I know that will come together later. Just because this is it's a rough draft, so it's not your actual talk.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah, whatever.
So picture this, we're in ancient Greece, a time of heroes and thinkers, a time where the foundations for at least Western society are being laid down. And one man rises above when you talk about philosophy and thinking. And this man, he talks about friendship and why it's important and what different kinds of friendship there are. And his name is Aristotle, and he talks about his friendships of virtue. He really focuses on his friendships of virtue as the highest form of friendship. So important question we have to ask ourselves, what is virtue? Now Aristotle is exalted by many philosophers, many theologians as, well, the person who laid down the foundations of their work. So Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest thinkers of all time, calls Aristotle the philosopher. He puts him on such high pedestal that he calls him the philosopher. Aquinas says that virtue is a habit that focuses someone on the good and on the act. So a good habit is so a virtue is something like justice, where you give to the other what they are due. The three types of friendships that Aristotle talks about are the friendship of virtue, the friendship of pleasure, and of utility. Now, we've all had somebody in our lives who, I don't know, maybe our house is the one with Pop-Tarts, or they need a place to stay, or you're really good at taking pictures. So that friendship is useful. And we've all had that friendship where maybe you're the house with a bunch of Pringles and Black Ops 3. And people hang out with you because of things that you provide them and because you're fun to hang out with. We've all had someone like this, either of these, but we all need somebody who can be like a shining light to us, telling us when we're right, but also when we're wrong, and pushing us towards what is good. A good friend of mine, who we'll meet shortly, he says, let's be friends. And he does that to really show that he wants to spend time in a way that provides him and also other people with the ability to take away something that helps them become better people. So, let's be friends. How do we do that? How do we be friends? There's so many ways to describe friendship. How do we be friends? First thing you have to do is become good yourself. Orient yourself towards what is good so that you know what is good. And so you can do the second thing, which is seek the good in others after you know what is good, after you see what is good, you can see it in other people, and you can gravitate towards them. And then the last thing is you have to seek the good for others. So once you know what is good, and once you see what is good in other people, you push them towards what is good for their sake, not for your own. It's just for their sake. That's what love is. So I've been very blessed here at Ball State with a number of these virtuous friendships, people who really care for me for my sake, love me for my sake, and want what's best for me for my sake, and push me to be the best that I can be. So one of these friends, his name is Daniel. He is goofy and smart and super introverted, and yeah, I really look up to him because he is always focused on what is good and how can he better himself, and he pushes the people around him to be the best that they can be as well. This is a friend who says, let's be friends. He's not very similar to Daniel in that he's extroverted and he always wants to be spending time with people and investing and helping people to be the best they can be, while also becoming the best that he can be. And yeah. So my question for you is, who are your virtuous friends? Who pushes you to be good? And how can you find those people? And if you don't know anybody like that, you can't think of any friends who are like that, or you just want more, well, I'm not perfect, but I do care about everybody here, and let's be friends.
Yay. Sorry, I just totally missed that ending because the alarm went off.
It's okay.
So I may have you do the ending again because I totally just missed it.
Okay.
Hi.
How did that?
Hi. We have the room reserved. Are you guys almost done?
Let me check our time real quick. We have about 20 more minutes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. You guys are very set up in here, so
Thank you
we
so
are
much.
sorry. Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
fine.
Oh, sorry. Oops. Okay. Anyways, what was I gonna say? Oh, how did that feel the second time?
It felt better the second time,
Okay.
yeah. Really having
Yeah.
the beginning more fleshed out, I think really set the tone.
I
for the
really
rest of the
liked
talk.
how you opened it up with like the heroes and like your hand gestures are good. Like it all comes natural, and I think like what I like to see is like not forceful stuff, and I don't think you have like a lot of moments where you need to be like but I do think like you can find that moment still. Like I think your hand gestures are good. Like I think that's really good. Where was it? Oh, you can, this is a random note. You can bold the 4. I know you have it italicized, but maybe even bold it or something, make it stand out even more, underline it, because I saw that it was italicized, but you could even highlight that even more. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you want to, but moving between each friend even, like, I don't know if it feels how it feels natural, but I think like I think if you can find 2 moments to move in your talk, like it will make it so much like freer, I guess, in a way, if that makes any sense. So if there's like one other moment where you feel like you can move, like maybe like between Daniel and Luke, maybe. Like I think if you find one other time to move would be great. What else?
So here's an idea.
Yeah.
What do you think about like the very, very, very beginning of the talk? I start at like the back of the room.
Okay.
And like, I don't know if we're gonna have the lights off when we do these.
You can alter the lights however you want.
Okay. And so
Literally,
like,
yeah.
yeah, if we start with like the lights off,
Okay.
it might have been Ashley's it might have been this class. There was a video of like a movie where a guy is kind of doing what I'm talking about. He's talking about, I don't remember what he was talking about, but he was basically like at the back of a room, and what he was saying was very evocative and very relatable, and like really like, I don't know, because I think because I can talk about I don't know, I could like, for this first slide, I could have like a picture of the, I don't know, the Parthenon, and like be at the back of the room and like paint that picture of like the ancient Greeks, time of heroes and philosophers and stuff. And I don't know, like I could paint that picture and, you know, like one man rises up and like do the movement, and like I'll be walking where this table is in the class if I do this. One do the I'll just start from the beginning.
Yeah, go for it. Do whatever you feel is natural, and I'll give you some feedback on it.
Okay. So that's gonna end up being the Parthenon, or some sort of Greek building of some sort.
Something, yeah.
All right.
Oh shoot.
Let's go back to ancient Greece, a time of heroes and philosophers, a time where the foundations of Western society would be laid down. One man rises above when talking about laying down the foundation for Western civilization. And this man has a philosophy of friendship. And he puts friendship on such high pedestal that it is more important to him than things like justice or temperance. And his name is Aristotle, and he understands friendship as something.
Yeah. I like that. Do you imagine that you would want your talk? I guess we can talk about lighting later. I like that a lot. I think like if you have like setting that scene and having that whatever you want up on that first slide, that it seemed really natural and I liked it. You could even move sooner on like the one where you say one man, then you can start moving. And then like once you get to your like platform, you can say Aristotle, like how you introduce like his name's Aristotle kind of thing. But yeah, you can even move sooner on the one man, and then when you get there, you're on Aristotle.
So takes back to ancient Greece, a time of heroes and philosophers, a time where the foundations of Western society would be formed and laid. When the foundations of Western society would be laid down, one man rises above when talking about philosophy and thinking and laying down those foundations. And that man's name is Aristotle, and he was this great philosopher who talks about friendship, and he holds friendship as so high of an importance that he places it above even justice or honor. Now, he talks about this friendship of virtue, and he exalts this above the other types of friendship. So what is virtue?
Yeah, I like that. I just had a thought. I like that you don't show like what you're talking about until you get up there, which is nice. Even if like don't rush like walking, even if you want to like keep filling on like random words like kind of deal. Take your time getting up there because it makes it even more impactful. I really like that you do that. I think it'll be good. I don't know if you like imagine having your lights like dim. Maybe you can just have them dim the whole time. You can just mess with them. Like honestly, when we go in that classroom and I forget to change the lights, it's like, oh, this is like too much light coming in. So I think if you like, I know that's a weird note, but the light could be really cool there. I like that intro a lot from the beginning to like what you came up with now, it definitely. What other notes did I have? Let me check our time. Okay, we have like 15 minutes.
What do you think, so with this slide talking about virtue,
Mm-hmm.
do you think I need to, I feel like this is a little bit like choppy in its presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that I need to like streamline this a little bit more? Because I can bring up
Yeah.
Aquinas, but I don't know if I need to do that. That might actually like take away from it. Because Aristotle, you know, Aquinas quotes Aristotle when talking about virtue like a lot.
You could almost, I don't think you over philosophize, I don't know the right word. I don't think you overdo that. You could, to make it less choppy, make it more relatable to your audience. So like I liked how at one point you did a run through and it was, you were talking about like, well, it's like justice, which is like this, or this, which is like this. So you could even like paint it as like when you're kind of like setting it like when you're a kid, like because people as a kid, like you don't really know what virtue is. You just know that like what's right and wrong and kind of deals. So you can almost like explain it like justice, you know, like when you're a kid and like, I'm trying to think what a good example would be. Just those like funny little moments that you could have like when you're explaining it so it's not so text heavy. Maybe you could kind of give your audience some examples of virtues as if they're like dumb kind of in a way. And I think that will help like explain throughout your talk how like how that changes as you get older. And maybe that's like a connection that you can find between like how I asked like for a little bit of a connection between like what it's like as a kid versus now. It kind of, if that's helpful, that could be a route you could take on this slide. You could even like, this is a random note, but like italicize it maybe or something fun. Just like
italicize virtue?
Yeah, make something like pop out about it
Okay.
to help your slide. I kind of want to like just look through the slides, if that's okay, like
Yeah.
real quick.
That works.
But I think that could help on it. Like I said, like however you feel natural with these. Let's see, okay. Is that a random thing? Or what's that?
Yeah, so that is, this
Uh-huh,
is like a basic PowerPoint setup.
gotcha.
So I don't know what to do.
If you
about
can,
the
like, delete
orange
that.
bookmark, yeah.
Maybe you could just make it like gray background, like reset the background maybe or something. I don't know if you could do that, but I'm just curious. Maybe this is even where you could highlight more. I don't know how, I'm trying to remember how much you go like in depth on this PowerPoint. But if you like, maybe that's your moment, like maybe like, that's where you really like are like, this is why you need to listen without telling them this is why you need to listen.
Okay.
Maybe this is where you could be like, extend off of that virtue and be like extend off that like most basic relationship as a kid to like now. Maybe that's where you like really have like, I think you can focus on this slide and like, I don't know if you, like for each of us we're picking these topics because it's like means something to us and we like care a lot about it, and I'm struggling so hard with mine right now because I care so much about it and it's so hard to write. And so maybe that's where you have your like moment of like, you don't need, I'm trying to think, because you do it at the end. You talk about how like, you know, you need more than like your Pop-Tart kind of friendship.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like that. I kind of like the Pop-Tart kind of friendship. That's a really cute line that you could like, not cute, but like I like it a lot. Like that's a funny like little moment that is unique to your topic. So I don't know, maybe do you want to go over up until, like we can skip the intro and maybe go from this,
Okay.
and then we can just go through 2 through 5. Maybe we can just focus on that for the last couple of minutes.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you have your introduction of like who he is, you're setting the scene, you go into like these friendships that he set up, his philosophy and like what virtue is. Maybe then you can connect it to your audience a little bit, like justice is like this kind of thing, or you have temperance or fortitude or prudence or things like that. I don't know how much he talks about those. Those are the 4 that I learned at camp. So then you could do that, kind of make it a little lighthearted-ish, kind of like less text heavy. Then you could go into this, focus on, yeah, you kind of could go back and forth a little bit. I think that that's, to answer your question though, and the longest response ever, that you could do maybe something like that with virtue. But I don't think it's bad that you mentioned St. Thomas Aquinas at all. Or, yeah, I don't think that's bad.
Okay.
And some of this you're just gonna like say right now, and I can just like take note of it and be like, this is what you can do after this. So you don't forget, like I can even send you everything that I like said.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
literally, I'll take pictures of this. Because I think the more that you do it, the more you're gonna find those moments that you wanna have fun with and that make it unique. And it's gonna get, like, this is a rough draft, so it's gonna become so much more natural and you won't question it at all by the end of it. So, alrighty.
Alright. Ramble, ancient Greece and stuff. Aristotle, friendship. What is virtue? One of the philosophers and theologians that exalts Aristotle is St. Thomas Aquinas, who was a priest in the 1200s who basically laid out everything that you could possibly need to know about Christianity. I don't want to say that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Ramble. Ancient Greece and stuff. Aristotle, friendship. Important question to ask is, what is virtue? And one of the theologians who exalts Aristotle above all the rest is St. Thomas Aquinas. And St. Thomas Aquinas says that virtue is a habit based on acting towards something that is good. So an example of a virtue is justice, which is where you render to somebody what is their due. So if I work 8 hours a day, you gave me 8 hours pay at the end of the day. That's an example of virtues. So, after I finished talking about justice, I kind of like...
You could even think of like, maybe give one other example, and you're trying to like think of like a transition. Is that what you're trying to think of?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm struggling to figure out like, okay, so I talk about justice, and then how do I...
You could be like, so for you all, it's like scene of justice, maybe one other virtue, maybe. And you could say something like, so those are the like beginnings of, or you could say something about, that's what you typically learn, or that's what you typically know about virtues. Something
what?
about like the basics of it. What are you thinking?
There is, it's a virtue, I think it's called friendliness today, but Aquinas calls it beneficence, which is the name of our angel.
Yeah.
So maybe I could talk about, like, beneficence is doing, because there's benevolence, which is where you will the good of the other, and then there's beneficence, which is where you do the good of the other. So like, I don't know, if I really want you to eat a chocolate chip cookie, and that's really good for you. Benevolence would be to say, Abby, I really want you to eat a chocolate chip cookie today because that's really good for you. And then beneficence would be to make you a chocolate chip cookie and say, here, I made you this cookie.
That's sweet.
You know.
I get it. I like that. Yeah, you could do something with that. Think on that. Like, yeah, don't be afraid to keep running through it and think of more. I like that. You could do something like that.
And then, how do I?
You could be like, so for you all, it's like scene of justice, maybe one other virtue, maybe. And you could say something like, so those are the like beginnings of, or you could say something about, that's what you typically learn, or that's what you typically know about virtues. Something about like the basics of it. What are you thinking?
There is, it's a virtue, I think it gets called friendliness today, but Aquinas calls it beneficence, which is the name of our angel.
Yeah.
So maybe I could talk about, like, beneficence is doing, because there's benevolence, which is where you will the good of the other, and then there's beneficence, which is where you do the good of the other. So like, I don't know, if I really want you to eat a chocolate chip cookie, and that's really good for you. Benevolence would be to say, Abby, I really want you to eat a chocolate chip cookie today because that's really good for you. And then beneficence would be to make you a chocolate chip cookie and say, here, I made you this cookie.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
I get it. I like that. Yeah, you could do something with that. Think on that. Like, yeah, don't be afraid to keep running through it and think of more. I like that. You could do something like that. But I think even just like saying something about like having a line where it's like, this is what you typically learn about, or without, how I'm saying it is not right. But you know what I mean? Like saying like, this is like the basic. But however, can you go to the next slide real quick? But however, with all these, like you say, like with all these virtues or something like that, like connect all the virtues to, like with all these friendships, there are all these virtues basically, but it's not just a virtue, virtuous relationship. It can be utility, pleasure, all these things introduced by Aristotle as well, and then you can kind of go into them too, which helps you lead into your Pringles.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I could talk about like, what is virtue? Virtue is a good habit that's based on act. So justice is doing the giving to the other what is their due. An example of justice would be to, if I work 8 hours during the day, I'm paid for 8 hours. I'm paid for the 8 hours work that I did. Another virtue is beneficence, and I'm thinking about like, you know, like the scales I could talk about like move this up here and then have like a picture of like the scales. Let's talk about justice. Maybe I could move from over here to over here when I'm talking about beneficence. And I can take a picture of Benny and put Benny over here and the scales over here.
Yeah.
And so I can talk about, let's see. So justice, giving to the other person what is their due. You work 8 hours a day, you paid for the 8 hours you did. Another virtue is beneficence, which is doing the good for somebody. Like, no, jeez.
How do I talk about that?
Knowing what is good for somebody and doing what is good for somebody. So, like, if it's really good, like I could use the chocolate chip cookies, or like, if you're struggling with like a breakup, I can come to your house with ice cream and a movie.
Yeah, I think I think you have your basics of your talk, and like you can even throw in like beneficence and things like that, but those little examples that you're going to think of is just going to make it even more relatable to them. Yeah, I like it though, I really do. I think you have a great basis for sure. I like that it's not so picture heavy, so you don't have to get, you can like definitely you can add a picture of those things, but I think like maybe keep consistency throughout your slides. So if you're going to use some in the beginning, maybe throw it in at the end, and not like throw it in, like it has to have purpose for sure.
Right.
But I think the more that their eyes can move would be helpful too.
So like.
And yeah, actually you do. You do have photos there.
Yeah, I've got Luke, Daniel.
Yeah.
And then this, and then this, and then I think those are all pictures. But this slide should have something in this area. Like there's a lot of empty space in this area.
You even like, you could even just keep everything centered. Do you know what I mean? Like how you have your questions all are centered.
So like how I
that's
have this
centered. Yeah.
This is centered.
You could even just keep it all centered, and the way that you could change it up a little bit would be just be like bolding things, like italicizing, making something bigger if it needs to be important. I think that the more, you could just bring that down there.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
I could say like, meet my friends who are good, and then who are your friends who are virtuous, and then who are the friends that are there for the utility and there for the pleasure.
And you could even reiterate when you're going through that, you could be like, who are your virtuous friends? Who are the people that blah, blah, blah. You could keep asking them questions regarding that one, and then you could have the next one. Who are your friends of utility? And keep asking them questions on that. That would help your ending a lot too. Yeah, and even having, that would help your ending so it's not so abrupt. Having those questions would be helpful. And then you could have like an ending where it's like,
knowing all this, knowing what good friendship is.
Just reiterating.
Yeah, good friendship is willing to give of the other person for their sake, doing what is good for them, pushing them to be the best they can be. Knowing that, let's be friends.
Yeah, I like that. That's like a 1 second slide kind of in a way. Everything can build up to this one thing, which is like this is the most like, I like that you have that one slogan of like, let's be friends, or like, there's those moments that I'm going to remember from this, and it's going to be like, let's be friends. It's going to be those one-liners kind of in a way. The one-liners are really important, I think, which is funny because you don't really think that. You think like you would remember like a long quote or something, but I remember like the one-liners. Let me see if we have time for anything else on this. Uh-oh. Stopped.
Uh-oh.
It definitely stopped.
Did it die?
I don't know. It's just black. Should I pressed this, and then I pressed on and off. it died. But I have it with me on my phone at least.
I mean, you said we were still good for 15. We were good.
Yeah, we're at 26. Let me just wrap up real quick and give you some like takeaways. Yeah, so just I think the more that you get up in a random room and maybe get some of your friends, like maybe you can invite these people to your talk and be like,
Yeah.
maybe that'd be fun. And maybe ask them like, is there something, this is what I think of you, is there something that you want me to say about you? Or you can even just do it in front of those people. I think the more that you're gonna run through this, the more comfortable you're gonna be with it. I think that's one point. And then just thinking of those little examples that we can relate to. I think that you don't do too much philosophy. I think it's a good balance, and I like your photos. I like your slides. Maybe just finding those ways to bold those things or things like that. The more simple, like, you know, you don't need a lot, honestly. Like, it's all about your presence and more about what you say than how you say it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be good. I think you're probably more together than most of us are.
Yeah.
So, just those little stories and tidbits and running through it, maybe it'll make you think of some more things which would make it better. Like how you thought of like many different things just by running it through like 2 times today. But yeah, do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so.
Well, you have my number if you need to ask anything or run anything by me. Yeah. Good job. Yeah. Look at these people in the room if they want it.
For us. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll help take all this stuff.